Hello, everyone. I'm Billy.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
Today we will be discussing Book 1, Chapter 4 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Books of the Fallen. This is part 2 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Both Billy and I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written and want to share our love of the series with you.
Now, we will be covering the events in this book in a linear fashion, so there will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. Now, we'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book, but knowing me and my big mouth, I'm sure to spoil something for someone, so in advance, I'm sorry. That's all I've got. I'm sorry.
A quick warning. Today's episode contains descriptions of violence. Listener discretion is advised.
And our show is listener supported, and if you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate that. And you can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. We have a number of corrections today.
I see that.
It turns out that my memory is not as accurate as I had thought it was. So I mentioned before that my brother is working his way through the episodes. I have previously recounted a tale of us going to what I said was a gun show where we bought a taser and our group of friends took turns tasing each other for fun. And we've never laughed so hard in our lives. Now, I will state again, it was the lowest kilovolt taser that they had, and it felt like a rubber band hitting you. So I don't want people to think that it was some situation where people are passing out from getting tased or any kind of craziness, right? Yeah, there was some trepidation at first, but after the first one, it was just joking from then on.
Right.
Well, the correction is, it was not a gun show.
Oh, okay.
It was an electronics show.
Right on.
And the choice to buy the taser, the funding for this was the choice of either a sugar glider as a pet or a taser purchase. So
I think it's we're dudes, man. It's an easy answer. It's a taser. I'm going to see the taser.
All right. So correction made.
Hopefully
I keep things straight from now on.
All right.
Recently, this is as of late August 2023, one of our fellow podcasts, D&J's Epic Quest, had an interview with Steven Erikson. And during that interview, I recommend you go listen to it. It's really good.
Okay.
Mr. Erikson has a lot of insightful things to say. He spent a lot of time talking about his writing methodology. I found it really interesting.
Very cool.
But one of the things that I got out of it was some pronunciation corrections that need to be made. Because while Mr. Lister in the audiobooks pronounces things a certain way, sometimes Mr. Erikson pronounces them a different way. And we like to honor that pronunciation when we know it exists.
Yes, and because for people who aren't aware of this, Mr. Lister, who is a fantastic narrator, because I'm doing a dual read/listen because I love that man. But he's the one that has us in Malazan.
Mm-hmm.
He's done that through the entire series. There's 10 books of Ralph Lister saying Malazan. I think it's even that way in the other ones, in the Esselmont stuff. I have those audiobooks as well.
I have not listened to the Esselmont audiobooks. I just read them.
I think I say that I may have purchased it, not listened. I can't remember, but I thought Malazan was not just from you; it was from the audiobooks. Bring it down. Tell us what the names are.
Okay, so Kruppa, Mr. Erikson pronounces it as Krupp.
Oh, okay.
And then we've been saying Felicin.
Yes.
He says Felicin.
Felicin, okay.
And then we've been saying Diker. He says Duiker.
Duiker. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Duiker. Woo. Krupp's easy. I get that. I get how you can mispronounce that one. Felicin, yeah, that's also another one of those. Where do you want the
emphasis
to lie?
The emphasis.
Exactly. Duiker, but Duiker, yeah, with the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable, please. I mean, that's just like Duiker. I thought it was gonna be like Duker or something like that. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be.
That's
Duker.
how I always when I read it, I thought it was Duker.
Yeah,
but he said Duiker. Yeah, so
Duiker. Yeah, okay. Right on.
So we will start pronouncing it that way.
Yes, sir. Because there's a lot of Duiker in this
chapter here, yeah.
Yeah, and in this book. So yes, I love Duiker. He's a great guy, man.
Oh yeah. All right, and I believe you had something you wanted to mention as well.
Tomorrow, well, we're recording this episode on August 27th. So August 28th, for those when y'all hear this, it will be too late. But I hope that y'all will have a great Hate Megar Day on the 28th. It is annually Hate Megar Day, August 28th. So we're approaching it rapidly. Are you doing anything to celebrate these festivals? Are you going to, will there be festivals? Will there be revels or anything like this?
I might have to put down a rebellion or two in the kingdom of Farengar.
Okay.
I'll set my owl bear loose. And my kobold secret police.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had so for those of you that may not have heard this story, I was involved in a Kingmaker campaign, which is set in the Pathfinder Dungeons and Dragons offshoot. It's based on D&D 3.5, and it was an evil campaign.
Which I love.
Yeah, it was fun. So we had a Gestapo made of kobolds. You know, they kept things
are they good for
under
anything
control.
Else? That's fantastic, dude. They should have been the brown shirts. I think the kobolds are more like the brown shirts. The goblins might would have been your secret police.
Well, I mean, that was what was available to us.
Right on.
Yeah, and
what you have.
Yeah, Megar was my character. I was a lich eventually.
Right on.
I had a tendency to remove people's eyeballs if they didn't tell me what I wanted to hear.
So this was an earned Hate Megar Day. So,
possibly. I mean, it depends. It depends on a certain point of view.
Yeah, your point of view is correct, sir. Y'all were playing evil, so you played it correctly.
Well, is it evil or is it just maintaining order?
If you're lawful evil, it's maintaining order.
It was lawful evil, yeah.
There you go. You're maintaining order, sir. Did you have a peaceful kingdom?
It was when we took it over.
Okay. Wait. It was peaceful before you took it over.
No, I mean, it needed to be conquered. Okay, I mean, it's a bunch of people. It wasn't a unified kingdom until we unified it.
Okay, right on.
I mean, it was a bunch of different. The kobolds weren't in alignment with anybody. They just lived in their caves and did raids or whatever kobolds do, right? The pixies were in their forest getting up to mischief. Right. We had to get everybody in alignment.
I get it.
So that we could have a kingdom.
You just can't have this stuff going on willy-nilly. It just doesn't allow for order.
Right.
You're the Empire. I get it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm part of the Empire.
All right. Well, thanks for reminding me that tomorrow's official Hate Megar Day. So
my pleasure.
Appreciate that.
My pleasure. It's on my calendar. That's why I know this. It actually cropped up on my calendar. I'm like, right on. It is Hate Megar Day.
Yeah. All right. Chapter 4 continued. We pick up the chapter in Ladro Keep on the morning following the incident with the deck of dragons and Kalam in the, what would you call that? The Keep's gathering chamber.
Yeah. Yeah, the fellowship hall, as dingy as it was.
It is revealed to us that the imperious woman and her companion who had entered the keep after Kalam the night before are Redblades. The woman, Captain Lostara Yil, and her companion departed the keep over an hour after Kalam had departed, riding south in the wake of the sandstorm. She had been unable to avoid getting close to Kalam, but Lostara had used bluster as a disguise. The deck of dragons' unexpected fielding had revealed details about Kalam and his mission, as well as the complicity of the keep's sergeant. Lostara checked their horses and turned as her companion emerged from the keep. He grinned at her and said, "You are thorough, as always. The commander led me a merry chase, however. I found him in the crypt, struggling to climb into a 50-year-old suit of armor. He was much thinner in his youth, it seems." I have a personal anecdote here if you want to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
One of my friends was getting married, and I was in his wedding party. We had to wear gray suits, and I happened to have a gray suit with a vest.
Okay.
I hadn't worn this vest in some time.
Uh-oh.
This was while we were working together.
Oh, okay.
I was pretty stressed out at work, and I was stress eating, so I gained some weight. And then the wedding comes around, and I'm trying to put this vest on the wedding day, and I'm having to really suck in to get this this vest on. I imagine this is what this guy felt like.
Yeah,
and then my brother, you haven't watched Game of Thrones, have you?
A little bit, very little bit.
Okay, in season 1, Robert Baratheon.
That's season 1 I've seen. So.
Yeah. Okay, so you've probably seen this. The king's putting on his armor, and he's like, "Where's the breastplate stretcher?" He's calling out for his squire to get that, and my brother, of course, makes that joke while I'm putting this stuff on. Yeah, so I've lived this. I wasn't fighting for my life at the time, though it felt like it while I was trying to suck my gut in for however long I had to stand up on the stage.
Right. Oh, my. Was it a Catholic wedding?
I do not believe so.
Good.
No.
Because those can be like endurance tests. It's a lot of standing and kneeling, and I've not done any of those because I know they're long.
Yeah, it wasn't like that.
Groovy.
Lostara swung herself into the saddle and asked, "None still breathing? You're certain you checked them all? What of the servants in the back hallway? I went through them perhaps too quickly." Her companion said, "You left not a single heart still beating, Captain." And that's pretty thorough there, killing even the servants.
I know a good man, Jeffrey. He's thorough. Sorry. It's a little model Lebowski there for you. Yes, very thorough. Yes, very thorough.
Lostara said, "Very good. Mount up. That horse of the assassins is killing these ones. We shall acquire fresh horses in Intisarm." Her companion said, "Assuming Beralta got around to arranging them." Lostara eyed him, then coolly said, "Trust Beralta, and be glad that this time I shall not report your skepticism." The man nodded and said, "Thank you, Captain." The two then left to follow Kalam. We had previously heard mention of Lostara Yil in the previous chapter, where Tened Beralta met Mebra shortly after his meeting with Kalam in Gen Rob.
Yes.
This section here did an excellent job of introducing her as a formidable and dedicated soldier among the Red Blades. And It wouldn't be easy to subdue an entire keep of people like that.
No, it would not. This kind of reminds me, have you ever seen A History of Violence?
Yes.
You know that introduction where this kind of reminds me for some reason when that little kid is the one left. Our introduction is to the hitman in that movie where as the credits are rolling, they've obviously murdered a bunch of people in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Or a motel, I should say. And as the guy's getting a drink for himself, he hears something, and there's this little girl or little kid standing in the hallway, and he's like, "Hey, come on." And it cuts to him reaching for his gun, and it cuts out, and it's like, yeah, I found one more kind of as they come out. That's what this kind of reminds me of. It's like very just matter of fact,
Mm-hmm.
We missed this one on the initial sweep.
Yeah. Who directed that?
That's Cronenberg, David Cronenberg.
That's what I was thinking. So he did that in Eastern Promises, right?
Back to back. Those are fantastic.
Both of them with Viggo Mortensen?
Yes. He did a third one with Viggo. Did you see the one with him? It's about him and Fassbender. It's one plays Carl Jung, the other one plays Freud.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I didn't see that one either, but I want to see that one because I love it. It's a period piece about those two. I love Viggo. Mm-hmm. I love Cronenberg. He's so weird.
Yeah. Well, those two movies in particular, they're both really good.
They're bookend movies. They're beautiful. To me, it's a great bookend. I own them both. I love them. I could watch them at the drop of a hat. Absolutely. Especially Eastern Promises.
Oh, yeah.
He fights naked in that. That always reminds me of Eddie fighting naked in The Gunslinger and drawing the three. So I don't know why, for some reason, that always reminds me of that, just because he's right. Eddie, Roland was right. It's like it requires, that's when you see with men, when they're not worried, they just fight regardless of the situation. It's like, wow.
I mean, you're fighting for your life.
You fight for your life, naked or not.
Yeah.
But some folks worry about that, apparently.
So die with dignity? Is that kind of the idea there?
No, I'm not going to die with dignity. I'm going to go out. I'm hoping I'm going out fighting, biting, kicking, screaming.
All right. We're taken to Mappo, Nicarium, and Tessum. Mappo crouched beside a stone staircase in the central room on the main floor of the monastery. The entire main floor of the monastery radiated in a circular pattern around the room. Mappo said, "This would, I imagine, lead down to the crypt." Icarium said, "If I recall correctly, when nuns of the Queen of Dreams die, the bodies are simply wrapped in linen and placed on recessed ledges in the crypt walls. Have you an interest in perusing corpses?" Mappo said, "Not generally, no. It's just that the stone changes as soon as the stairs descend below floor level." Icarium raised a brow and asked, "It does?" Mappo continued, "The level we're on is carved from living rock, the cliff's limestone. It's rather soft, but beneath it there are cut granite blocks. I believe the crypt beneath us is an older construct. Either that or the nuns and their cult hold that a crypt's walls and approach must be dressed, whereas living chambers need not be." Icarium shook his head and approached Mappo. He said, "I would be surprised. The Queen of Dreams is life aspected. Very well. Shall we explore?" Mappo descended first. Neither he nor Icarium needed any additional light source. The worn stairs continued down and down. At the 70th step, they ended in the center of an octagonally walled chamber. Friezes decorated each wall. Beyond the staircase's landing, the floor was honeycombed with rectangular pits, cut down through the tiles and the granite blocks beneath removed. These blocks were now stacked over what was obviously a portal way. Within each pit was a shrouded corpse. The air was dry, scentless. Mappo said, "These paintings do not belong to the cult of the queen." The scenes on the walls revealed thick fir trees covered in moss-stained boles on all sides. The effect created was of standing in a glade deep in an ancient forest. Between the trunks here and there was the hint of hulking four-legged beasts, their eyes glowing as if in reflected moonlight. That's supremely creepy in the darkness, I imagine.
Oh, I imagine so, but what do you think? This said honeycomb. Does this hint at Kamraun stuff?
To be honest with you, I'm completely lost with this whole section.
I am too, but I love this section.
Ikariam would know about Kamraun and what that is. I think instead of saying it feels like Kurald Galain, he would say if it was otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, I think that is correct because I didn't even think about that. But that would be weird. Then I'm just curious if maybe this is just a nightmare construct or so. A lot of this stuff in this monastery really always stands out for me. I have a lot of memories in this book of this monastery. It's a really real place to me. Mm-hmm. This place in particular, where they go underneath and all this stuff they find underneath, always stands with me. It's really close on me for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, this scene depicted here in the darkness, but the eyes are glowing and you can kind of see some hulking shapes out there. It's really creepy.
Yeah, it is.
He's saying it's Kurald Galain. Maybe this is what the forests in darkness felt like. I don't know.
That could be, because I know that they had forests and it was just dark.
Yeah, it was just dark.
They could see. It's a weird concept. So
right, we'll know when we get to Forge of Darkness.
That's true.
Ikariam crouched down and ran a hand over the remaining tiles. He said, "This floor held a pattern before the nuns' workers cut graves in it. Pity." Mappo glanced at the blocked doorway and said, "If answers to the mysteries here exist, they lie beyond that barricade." Ikariam asked, "Recovered your strength, friend?" Mappo said, "Well enough," and went to the barrier, then pulled down the highest block. As he tipped it down into his arms, he staggered and let out a savage grunt. Ikariam rushed to help him lower the granite block to the floor. Mappo exclaimed, "Hood's breath, heavier than I'd expected." Ikariam said, "I'd gathered that. Shall we work together then?" 20 minutes later, they had cleared enough room to proceed into the hallway beyond. The final 5 minutes, they had an audience, as a squall of Baccaral appeared on the staircase, silently watching their efforts. When Mappo and Ikariam clambered through the doorway, however, the Baccarala did not follow.
So is that like a clouder of cats?
I'm unfamiliar with that terminology.
They're called clouders, or a glaring, I think. Cat groups are. So, it's like a murder of crows. Is it a squall of Baccaral?
Enlighten me. I want to hear more about this cat. It's a glaring of cats?
I think it's a glaring and also a clouder. Or two terms that can be called for this. But there's some other interesting ones. Like I said, my favorite one is a murder of crows.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one.
It's a parliament of rooks. I don't know where these come from. I don't know. Just my years of reading weird things have popped in my brain and come out. And that's it from Big Bang. Actually, Sheldon goes nuts and buys a bunch of cats.
Do you think they have one for hippos?
Dude, please. There's always, we're going to find, okay, hold on one second. A group of, would they be hippopotami?
No, it's got to be something more epic than that.
No, I'm just saying, what is a group of hippos? It's called a bloat.
Bloat of hippos.
It says it may seem comical and perhaps a tad insensitive, but a group of hippos is called a bloat.
That's awesome.
Hippo bloats can number from less than a dozen to a couple of hundred of animals.
Oh,
dude, that's horrifying. That
is a bloat of hippos.
Yes, it is. Is that scarier than a zombie horde? What if it's zombie hippos? Dude, it's over. We've lost. We've lost.
That's an escalation that I'm not prepared to contemplate at this point.
Oh.
Yeah. All right.
That would be bad, though. You have to admit it would be bad if those guys got a taste for human flesh. It'd be over. Woo.
Hello, nerds. Come listen to the History Nerds United podcast, and let's make history fun again. We interview today's best authors, whether they are established Pulitzer Prize winners or someone debuting their first book. Let us show you that history is not a boring class you took in high school, but a place where the best stories come from. And we don't just cover history, we also love to chat about true crime, biographies, memoirs, and so much more. So head on over to History Nerds United and let us introduce you to your new favorite book and learn the story behind the story.
History Nerds United.
The hallway stretched away before them, lined by twin columns made of the trunks of cedars. Each bowl was at least an arm span in diameter. The shaggy, gouged bark remained, although most of it had fallen away and now lay scattered over the floor. Mappo laid a hand on one wooden pillar and said, "Imagine the effort of bringing these down here." Ikariam sniffed the air and said, "Warren, the residue remains, even after all these centuries." Mappo asked, "After centuries? Can you sense which Warren, Ikariam?" Ikariam said, "Kurald Galain, elder, the Warren of Darkness."
The elderest.
The eldest?
I said the elderest.
The elderest.
In darkness, wouldn't that be its oldest? The most elder?
I think Starval Demelain technically is the eldest.
You're correct.
Which is the Warren of Dragons.
It would have to be, because it houses the Warrens. Okay.
Mappo said, "Tist Andi, in all the histories of 7 cities that I am aware of, I've never heard mention of Tist Andi present on this continent, nor in my homeland, on the other side of the Jag Odan. Are you certain? This does not make sense." Ikariam said, "I am not certain, Mappo. It has the feel of Kurald Galain, that is all. The feel of dark. It is not Amtos Falak nor Telon, not Starval Demelain. I know of no other Elder Warrens." Mappo said, "Nor I." Now, a quick reminder on all these Warrens in case anyone is feeling overwhelmed or can't remember what they were. Kurald Galain is the Warren of True Darkness, as previously stated. Not to be confused with Rashan, which is the upstart version of Darkness, which is the present-day iteration of it. Amtos Falak is the Jaghut Warren associated with ice. Talon is the Talan Imas Warren associated with fire. And finally, Starval Demelain is the Warren of Dragons. It is the first Warren which all other Warrens sprouted from.
Quick question. When you said Rashan, so is inside of Dragdapur, that's not Rashan, that's Kurald Galain, right?
It is. It's True Darkness. It's the gate to True Darkness, yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Here is something interesting. The next sentence, the book says, "Without another word, the 3 began walking." And I thought only Ikariam and Mappo were down here. Do you think this is intentional, or do you think this is something that the editor missed?
I think it's intentional.
Okay, so are they implying that Iskarol Pust is somehow following along with them?
That'd be my take on it. Somehow, whether he's riding something, like his conscience riding on something, kind of like...
He's in the shadows.
Yeah, he could very well be in the shadows. He's so crazy. I'm sorry. I love that guy.
Oh, he's got a good monologue later in this chapter.
Oh, my word. He does.
Yeah.
He's got some good ones.
The hallway ended 330 paces later, opening out into another octagonal chamber, this one with its floor raised a hand's width higher than that of the hallway. Each flagstone was also octagonal, and on each of them images had been intricately carved, then defaced with gouges and scoring in what seemed entirely random, frenzied destruction. Mappo felt his hackles stiffening into a ridge on his neck as he stood at the room's threshold. Ikariam stood beside him and said, "I do not suggest we enter this chamber." Mappo grunted agreement. The air stank of sorcery. Like waves of heat, magic bled from the flagstones, from the images carved upon them and the wounds many of those images now bore. Ikariam shook his head and said, "If this is Kurald Galain, its flavor is unknown to me. It is corrupted." Mappo asked, "By the defilement?" Ikariam said, "Possibly. Yet the stench from those claw marks differs from what rises from the flagstones themselves. Is it familiar to you? By Decembra's mortal tears it should be, Mappo. Decembra is the lord of tragedy. Mappo squinted down at the nearest flagstone bearing scars and flared his nostrils. He said, Soul Taken, divers, the spice of shapeshifters, of course. Mappo barked out a savage laugh that echoed in the chamber. He said, The path of hands, Ikariam, the gate, it's here. Ikariam said, More than a gate, I think. Look upon the undamaged carvings. What do they remind you of? Mappo had an answer to that. He scanned the array with growing certainty, but the realization it offered only brought more questions. He said, I see the likeness, yet there is an unlikeness as well. Even more irritating, I can think of no possible linkage. Ikariam said, No such answers here. We must go to the place we first intended to find, Mappo. We approach comprehension, I am certain of that. Mappo asked Ikariam, Do you think Iskarl Pust is preparing for more visitors? Soul Taken and divers, the imminent opening of the gate. Is he, and by extension Shadow Realm, the very heart of this convergence? Ikariam said, I do not know. Let's ask him. They stepped back from the threshold. When Ikariam said, We approach comprehension, the 3 words evoked terror within Mappo. He stood at the side of powers that staggered his mind, power past and powers present, the nameless ones, with their charges and hints and visions, their cowled purposes and shrouded desires, creatures of fraught antiquity, if the trellised legends held any glimmer of truth. Mappo thought, And Ikariam, oh dear friend, I can tell you nothing. My curse is silence to your every question, and the hand I offer as a brother will lead you only into deceit. In love's name, I do this, at my own cost, and such a cost. Mappo's in such a tough spot. He's a good guy, and the forced lies of omission and his continuous efforts to put Ikariam on another path are really at war with his friendship with Ikariam.
Yeah, it is, and it makes it hard to read sometimes because I, like you, feel this compassion, and he has this terrible secret, which we still don't really know what it is, kind of backstory going on, but he does really have a real love for Ikariam, despite whatever else is going on. Maybe despite what's going on, he's come to love him. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think initially when he took on this role, which we don't know a terrible lot about yet, we're getting hints at it, that he knew Ikariam or had any feelings towards him, right? But spending 1,000 years with him, they've developed a friendship.
Yeah, that's right. But he's watched this guy kind of remember and forget.
The Bacarala awaited them at the stairs and followed the 2 at a discreet distance up to the main level. They found Iskarl Pust in the vestibule he had converted into his sleeping chamber. Iskarl Pust was muttering to himself as he filled a wicker rubbish container with rotted fruit, dead bats, and mangled risen. He threw Mappo and Ikariam a scowl over one shoulder as they stood at the room's entrance. Pust hissed, If those squalid apes are following you, let them wear my wrath. No matter which chamber I choose, they insist on using it as repository for their foul leavings. I have lost patience. They mock a high priest of shadow at their peril. And this is such cat-like behavior.
Yes. I wonder if anything's left on the edges of the counters here.
I'll tell you what, the cat that we just adopted knocked my wife's keyboard that I built her off of the edge of something the other day.
Wow. Did they look at you while doing it?
No, I was in the other room and I heard a crash because this thing has got an aluminum case. It's a computer keyboard, not a musical keyboard. It's got an aluminum case. It's heavy, and it was on the edge-ish, and she knocked it off.
Okay.
Yeah. Made quite the noise.
Hey, cats doing what they do best.
Yeah.
Being cats.
I've seen videos of them maliciously push things off the edge where they're laying there and then they just look at whoever is filming them and then they just push it.
Well, people forget about people that have cats that do that a lot. It's because they're like kids. When they were younger doing it, they laughed at them doing it. And the cat was praised for doing it. And so they don't understand now. So the cat, and some cats do hold a grudge. They'll look at you and just go,
yes. Mm-hmm.
And just look. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of the charm of a cat and the patience of a cat. Sometimes like, oh, I could just kill you right now, buddy. Could just make some new cat gut strings,
Oh, don't talk to me about gut strings. That reminds me of that Hannibal episode.
That nasty Hannibal episode.
Yeah. What an opening on that one.
Absolutely. Nasty.
Mappo said, "We have found the gate." Iskarl did not pause in his cleaning. He said, "Oh, you have you? Fools. Nothing is as it seems. A life given for a life taken. You have explored every corner, every cranny, have you? Idiots! Such overconfident bluster is the banner of ignorance. Wave it about and expect me to cower? Ha! I have my secrets, my plans, my schemes. Iskarl Pust's maze of genius cannot be plumbed by the likes of you. Look at you two, both ancient wanderers of this mortal earth. Why have you not ascended like the rest of them? I'll tell you. Longevity does not automatically bestow wisdom. Oh no, not at all. I trust you are killing every spider you spy. You had better be, for it is the path to wisdom. Oh yes, indeed, the path. Bacarala have small brains, tiny brains inside their tiny round skulls, cunning as rats, with eyes like glittering black stones. For hours once, I stared into one's eyes, he into mine, never once pulling gaze away. Oh no, this was a contest, and one I would not lose. 4 hours, face to face, so close I could smell his foul breath, and he mine. Who would win? It was in the lap of the gods. 4 hours he stared in his eyes.
4 hours, dude. Hey, there's obviously a lot of time here in the desert to kill. What else are you going to do?
Yeah. Mappo glanced at Ikariam, then cleared his throat. He asked, "And who, Iskarl Pust, won this battle of wits?" Iskarl Pust fixed a pointed stare on Mappo and said, "Look upon him who does not waver from his cause, no matter how insipid and ultimately irrelevant, and you shall find in him the meaning of dull-witted. The Baccaral could have stared into my eyes forever, for there was no intelligence behind them. Behind his eyes, I mean. It was proof of my superiority that I found distraction elsewhere." Mappo asked, "Do you intend to lead the divers and soul-taken to the gate below, Iskarl Pust?" Pust said, "Blunt are the trail, determined in headlong stumbling and headlong in stumbling determination. As I said, you know nothing of the mysteries involved, the plans of Shadow Throne, the many secrets of the Grey Keep, the shrouded house where stands the throne of Shadow. Yet I do. I, alone among all mortals, have been shown the truth arrayed before me. My God is generous. My God is wise, as cunning as a rat. Spiders must die. The Baccarala have stolen my broom, and this quest I set before you two guests. Ikariam and Mappo Trell, famed wanderers of the world, I charge you with this perilous task. Find me my broom."
Oh, my word. I love this guy so much. He reminds me in these rants. Did you ever watch the Doom Patrol?
I watched, I think, 3 episodes of season 1.
Okay. There's the cockroach given to megalomaniacal rants occasionally at the end of the world type events that kind of crop up around the Doom Patrol sometimes. And for some reason, these things that Pust says are very similar. I can just imagine this ranting. But it's from Pust is such a small fellow, but he's dangerous. He's very dangerous. He comes across as foolish, but he's very dangerous.
Yeah. The stuff we've seen from him so far, none of it's been this extensive in terms of his madness. It's all been relatively benign so far, but I think we're starting to get to see the real Iskarl Pust with these ramblings here.
Yeah. It's hanging out. It's all hanging out here.
Yes.
And I love it.
I love it.
Yeah. He's just nice enough to let them share their place, his place with them.
Yeah.
You just got to put up with him being out of his ever-loving mind. But I mean, he's been benevolent for the most part. I wouldn't say benevolent. He's been benign.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Out in the hallway, Mappo sighed. "Well, that was fruitless. What shall we do now, friend?" Ikariam looked surprised and said, "It should be obvious, Mappo. We must take on this perilous quest. We must find Iskarl Pust's broom." Mappo wearily said, "We have explored this monastery, Ikariam. I noticed no broom." Ikariam's mouth quirked slightly, and he said, "Explored? Every corner, every cranny? I think not. Our first task, however, is to the kitchen. We must outfit ourselves for our impending explorations." Mappo said, "You are serious?" Ikariam confirmed, "I am." We are taken to Duiker in Hisar. The flies were biting in the heat. People filled Hisar's fountains until midday, crowded shoulder to shoulder in the tepid, murky waters, before retiring to the cooler shade of their homes. Duiker scowled as he drew on a loose, thinly woven talaba while Bolt waited by the door. Duiker muttered, "Why not under the moon? Cool night air, stars high overhead with every spirit looking down. Now that would ensure success." Bolt's sardonic grin didn't help. Duiker strapped on his belt and turned to Bolt and said, "Very well, lead on, Uncle." Bolt's grin widened, deepening the scar until it seemed he had two smiles instead of one. Outside, Culp waited with the mounts, astride his own small, sturdy-looking horse. They rode through mostly empty streets. It was Maroc, early afternoon, when sane people retired indoors to wait out the worst of the summer heat. Duiker had grown accustomed to napping during Maroc. He was feeling grumpy and out of sorts to attend Sormo's ritual. Warlocks were notorious for their impropriety, their deliberate discombobulating of common sense. For the defense of decency alone, the Empress might be excused the executions. Duiker grimaced, as this was clearly not an opinion to be safely voiced within hearing range of any Wiccans. Right. They reached the city's northern end and rode out on a coastal track for half a league before swinging inland, into the wastes of the Odon. An hour later, they approached a dead oasis. All that remained of what had once been a lush natural garden amidst the sands was a stand of withered, gnarled cedars rising from a carpet of tumbled palms. I never thought of cedars growing in the desert, but indeed they can.
Oh, yes, they do. I live in the semi-arid region of Texas, and we grow a lot of cactus and a lot of cedar here, a lot of mountain cedar.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's funny because this stuff, apparently, I guess it has deep roots, and it can survive through the dry summers.
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
That's what happened here.
Well,
the oasis is gone. They have those deep roots.
Yeah, and they do well. So
many of the trees bore strange projections that drew Duiker's curiosity. Culp asked, "Are those horns in the trees?" Duiker said, "Veteran, I think," jammed into a fork, then grown past, leaving them embedded deep in the wood. These trees were likely 1,000 years old before the water vanished. Culp grunted. "You'd think they'd be cut down by now, this close to Hisar." Bolt said, "The horns are warnings, holy ground, once long ago. Memories remain." Duiker muttered, "As well they should. Sormo should be avoiding hallowed sand, not seeking it out. If this place is aspected, it's likely an inimical one to a Wiccan warlock." Bolt said, "I've long since learned to trust Sormo Enath's judgment, historian. You'd do well to learn the like." Duiker said, "It's a poor scholar who trusts anyone's judgment, even and perhaps especially his own." Bolt sighed and grinned. He said, "You walk shifting sands, as the locals would say." Culp asked, "What would you Wiccans say?" Bolt's eyes glittered with mischief. He said, "Nothing. Wise words are like arrows flung at your forehead. What do? Why, you duck, of course. This truth a Wiccan knows from the time he first learns to ride, long before he learns to walk." And that's awesome. Wiccans learn to ride a horse before they can walk.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. No wonder they're so tied to the horses.
And I did a little research because I was curious if this is the same for Mongolians. And it's a pretty common search, apparently, for people to ask, is it true Mongolians learn to ride a horse before they can walk? They start them when they're like 3.
All right.
I think they can walk at that point, but
they can
close
walk,
enough.
Yeah,
and I think that kind of cements my suspicion that this is a Mongolian-based culture.
Yeah, probably so.
This is kind of some of the stuff that I was picking up on that led me to that interpretation.
Yeah, I agree. I've always felt that with you.
They found Sormo in a clearing. The drifts of sand had been swept aside, revealing a heaved and twisted brick floor, all that remained of a structure of some sort. Chips of obsidian glittered in the joins. Culp dismounted and eyed Sormo, who stood in the center, hands hidden within heavy sleeves. He swatted at a fly and asked, "What's this then? Some lost, forgotten temple?" Sormo slowly blinked and said, "My assistants concluded it had been a stable. They then left without elaborating." Culp scowled at Duiker. He whispered, "I despise Wiccan humor." Sormo gestured them closer and said, "It is my intention to open myself to the sacred aspect of this horror, which is the name Wiccans give to holy places open to the skies." Culp's face was white. He asked, "Are you mad? Those spirits will rip your throat out, child. They are of the 7. Sormo retorted, "They are not. The spirits in this horror are raised in the time before the 7. They are the land's own, and if you must liken them to a known aspect, then it must be Talon. Duiker groaned. Hood's mercy. If it is indeed Talon, then you will be dealing with Talani Mass, Sormo. The undead warriors have turned their backs on the Empress and all that is the Empire, ever since the Emperor's assassination. Sormo's eyes were bright. He asked, and have you not wondered why? Duiker's mouth snapped shut. He had theories in that regard, but to voice them to anyone would be treason. And that sounds like he's on the same page as Hebrick.
Yeah.
In terms of what he suspects.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't want to wind up on the auditorial aisle, so he keep his mouth shut.
Right. And what did Hebrick say? So Bodden, in the prologue, when they were in the chain gang, he had said that at Hebrick's trial, the Empress wasn't listening. After all, Hebrick had called her a murderer and then had the gall to say that she had bungled the job. So
that's right.
I suspect that's what Duiker is thinking here as well.
Yes. Too funny.
Culp's dry question to Sormo broke through Duiker's thoughts. He asked, and has Empress Lysine tasked you with this? Are you here to seek a sense of future events, or is this just a feint? Bolt stood a few paces from them. He spat and said, we need no seer to guess that, mage. Sormo raised his arms out to his sides and addressed Culp. Stay close. His eyes went to Duiker, and he said, and you, see and remember all you will witness here. Duiker said, I am already doing so, Warlock. Sormo nodded, then closed his eyes. His power spread like a faint, subtle ripple, sweeping over Duiker and the others to encompass the entire clearing. Daylight faded abruptly, replaced by a soft dusk. The dry air was suddenly damp and smelled of marshlands. Ringing the glade like sentinels were cypresses. Moss hung from the branches in curtains, hiding what lay beyond in impenetrable shadow.
Hold on real quick. This is why I sometimes tied this to what I thought would be the gate over here, because where they're doing this seems to mirror what Icarium and Mappos see in my brain. The glade.
Well, these are cypresses and those were cedars, right?
Cypresses. Okay.
It's a different scene.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
And I don't remember the moss on the other one.
I thought there was something kind of, for some reason I thought there was, but okay, go ahead.
Maybe. There may have been.
Yeah.
Different trees, though. Duiker could feel Sormo Enath's sorcery like a warm cloak. He had never before felt a power such as this one. Calm and protective, strong yet yielding. He wondered at the Empire's loss of exterminating these warlocks. An error Lysine had clearly corrected, though it might well be too late. Sormo loosed an ululating cry that echoed as if they stood within a vast cavern. The next moment the air was alive with icy winds. Sormo staggered, his eyes now open and widening with alarm. He drew a breath, then visibly recoiled at the taste, and Duiker could not blame him. Bestial stench rode the winds, growing fouler by the moment. Taut violence filled the glade, announced in the sudden thrashing of the moss-laden branches. Duiker saw a swarming cloud approach Bolt from behind, and shouted a warning. Bolt whirled, long knives in his hands. He screamed as the first of the wasps stung. Cult bellowed, divers! One hand grasped Duiker's talaba and pulled him back to where Sormo stood as if dazed. Rats scampered over the soft ground, shrilly screaming as they attacked a writhing bundle of snakes. This is escalating quite quickly, isn't it?
Yes. And this is also real core memory here, but yes, this is core. But
oh, yeah. It's like an explosion of action.
Yes. Oh, it's wild. Love it.
The historian felt heat on his legs, looked down. Fire ants swarmed him up to his thighs. The heat rose to agony. He screamed. And I've experienced this. It's nasty.
It's nasty. It's a bad feeling.
What's the most amount of fire ant bites you've gotten at once?
5 or 6.
Okay. When I was working at a water park, when I was a lifeguard in high school, one time I was walking and all of a sudden my feet felt like they caught on fire.
Ooh.
I had walked through some fire ants. I got about 40 bites on each foot.
Ooh, gracious.
My feet swelled up so bad. It was excruciating.
Do you know what helps with that, strangely enough?
No.
With ant bites? Benadryl. Benadryl works good for ant bites.
I think we did end up putting Benadryl on it, but it just took a while. I think it was at least 4 or 5 hours before it's semi-tolerable.
Yeah, that's awful. That many bites. I mean, it's funny. The house I had in Garland, we had a lot of these little black sugar ants, I guess is what you call them. And I've woke up with one in my belly button chewing about 20 bites inside my belly button, but they're tiny ants. They're not a fire ant. It's not the same thing. Fire ants are back. I mean, those 5, I still remember them. That's when I was a kid, and I haven't forgotten that pain.
It was rough, man.
That's a lot worse than mine was, dude. Please.
Yeah.
You win.
Well, I mean, Duiker got them all the way up to his thighs. That would be even way worse.
Well, it's so funny because here in Texas, like I say, we're home of dirt, ants, and wasps, but thank the Lord we don't live in Australia, man. All their insects look like roid rage versions of our insects.
Oh, dude. It's terrible. So much crazy stuff over there.
Have you seen the jack jumper?
No.
Dude, the jack jumper alone is a horrific beast. It's a wasp ant. It doesn't fly. It's like
it's like one of those red velvet ants, like because that's a wasp.
Oh no, this is a jack jumper is something that people die from poisoning pretty frequently over there.
Okay,
but they're not aggressive towards people unless you walk into them, kind of deal. So, but they're working on new antivenoms over there for a long time. The problem is that they'll swarm you. That's why you die, not from the one bite. The one bite is bad enough, but they'll swarm on you. So, but they've got a bite and a sting.
Okay.
So it's a double whammy. They got the teeth and the tail sting.
So they got to hold on for that massive poison injection.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, it's bad.
Terrible.
It's a scary. It's horrific.
Culp swore and unleashed his warren in a pulse of power. Shriveled ants fell from Duiker's legs like dust. The attacking swarm flinched back and retreated. The rats had overrun the snakes and now closed in on Sormo, who frowned at them. Off where Bolt crouched and slapped futilely at the stinging wasps, liquid fire erupted in a swath, the flames tumbling over the veteran. Duiker looked to the fire source and saw that an enormous demon had entered the clearing, midnight-skinned and twice the height of a man. The creature voiced a roar of fury and launched a savage attack on a white-furred bear. The glade was alive with divers and soul-taken, the air filled with shrieks and snarls. The demon landed on the bear and drove it to the ground with a snap and crunch of bones, leaving the animal twitching. The black demon leapt to one side and roared a second time, and this time Duiker heard meaning within it. He shouted to Culp, "It's warning us!" The demon's arrival drew the divers and soul-taken. They fought each other in a frenzied rush to attack the creature. Duiker said, "We have to get out of here. Pull us out, Culp, now!" Culp hissed in rage, "How? This is Sormo's ritual, you damned book grub!" The demon vanished beneath a mob of creatures, yet clearly remained upright, as the divers and soul-taken clambered up what seemed a solid pillar of stone. Black-skinned arms appeared and flung away dead and dying creatures. It could not last. Duiker yelled, "Hood take you, Culp. Think of something." Culp's face tightened. He said, "Drag Bolt to Sormo, quickly. Leave the warlock to me." Culp bolted to Sormo and shouted in an effort to wake the youth from the trance. Duiker spun to where Bolt lay huddled 5 paces away. His legs felt impossibly heavy beneath the prickling pain of the ant bites as he staggered to Bolt. Bolt had been stung scores of times. His flesh was misshapen with fiery swelling. He was unconscious, possibly dead. Duiker gripped the man's harness and dragged him to where Culp continued accosting Sormo Inath. As Duiker arrived, the demon gave one last shriek, then disappeared beneath the mound of attackers. The divers and soul-taken then surged toward the 4 men. Sormo Inath was oblivious, his eyes glazed, unheeding of Culp's efforts to shout him into awareness. Duiker gasped, "Wake him or we're dead." He stepped over Bolt to face the charging beast with naught but a small knife. The weapon would little avail him against the seething cloud of hornets that swiftly closed the distance. The scene was jolted, and Duiker saw they were back in the dead oasis. The divers and soul-taken were gone. He turned to Culp and yelled, "You did it! How?" Culp glanced down at a sprawled, moaning Sormo Inath. He muttered, "I'll pay for it," then met Duiker's eyes. He said, "I punched the lad. Damn near broke my hand doing it, too. It was his nightmare, wasn't it?" Duiker blinked, then shook himself and crouched down beside Bolt. He said, "This poison will kill him long before we can get help." Culp squatted, ran his good hand over Bolt's swollen face. He said, "Not poison, more like an infecting warren. I can deal with this, Duiker, as with your legs." He closed his eyes in concentration. Sormo Inath slowly pushed himself into a sitting position and looked around, then tenderly touched his jaw, where the ridged imprint of Culp's knuckles stood like puckered islands in a spreading flush of red. Duiker said he had no choice. Sormo nodded. Duiker asked, "Can you talk? Any loose teeth?" Sormo said, "Somewhere a crow flaps broken-winged on the ground. There are but 10 left." That's an interesting statement. It's like the 9 lives of a cat. I wonder if he really feels that he lost one of the ones that's riding his soul.
That's what I was curious of, because that's very specific. It makes me feel like that. It's like he lost one of them.
Duiker asked, "What happened there, Warlock?" Sormo's eyes flicked nervously. He said, "Something unexpected, historian. A convergence is underway. The path of hands, the gate of the soul taken, and the divers. An unhappy coincidence." Duiker scowled and said, "You said Talon." Sormo cut in. "And so it was. Is there a blending between shapeshifting and Elder Talon? Unknown. Perhaps the divers and soul taken are simply passing through the warren, imagining it unoccupied by Talani mass, and therefore safer. Indeed, no Talani mass to take umbrage with the trespass, leaving them with only each other to battle." Duiker grumbled. "They're welcome to annihilate each other then." His legs slowly gave way beneath him, until, like Sormo, he sat on the ground. Colt called over, "I shall help you in a moment." Duiker nodded and found himself watching a dung beetle struggle heroically to push aside a fragment of palm bark. He sensed something profound in what he watched, but was too weary to pursue it. And thus the chapter ends. What a chapter that was.
What an amazing chapter that is.
Yeah, it's great.
All of this past couple chapters are just nothing but just solid, this work up, build up. You're like, oh my goodness, how does he keep going up? It just keeps ratcheting it up. It's amazing.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's accelerating, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, it does. Great chapter, though. Man.
For standout moments, I enjoyed the introduction to Lestara Yiel, seeing her ruthless efficacy on display.
Do I hear a little Spanish Inquisition respect there? No one expects the Spanish Inquisition to keep up the surprise. Surprise and fear surprise. It's always the ruthless efficiency, and that gets me. I was thinking the same thing, but I do agree. I love Lestara. Wow, she's tough.
Yeah,
we don't even see what she does, but we know she's obviously tough to have killed all those. With her and one other person, killed all those folks. That's not an easy task.
No, it is not. The revelation that the Path of Hands ends in Tessum.
Yeah,
that is quite a plot development there.
Yes, it is. I agree.
Puss Mad Ramblings, particularly enjoyed those this time.
Yes, I'm like you. It's always a real treat to interact with this fellow, but here, I'm like you. It's more like letting more of the madness, it's like let a little bit more of that show creep out around the edges, shall we say?
Yes. And I enjoyed Ikariam's sense of humor as he agreed to take on Puss' most important mission. It's good to see that.
I suggest we get equipped. It makes it sound like a road trip too. It's like, no, we're just gonna be looking through here, but
well, maybe he suspects more, right? That they might get lost in there, so he wants to be prepared. Who knows?
Absolutely.
And then the scene in the Talon Warren with all the soul taken and divers was spectacular.
Oh yeah.
This is our first glimpse of just how big this convergence is. So far, we've only seen one or two at a time.
Yes, and that's to have what I take it to be hundreds and dozens of bigger creatures and hundreds of smaller critters in that scene. Is that how you see that?
Oh yeah, it's just an explosion of chaos.
Yeah.
I'm sure only a little bit of it was described, but it's just madness. I think, was there rats on the ground too? And there's wasps, there's the ants, there's bears, there's this
snakes.
Demon. Yeah, snakes. Yeah. I mean, it's just out of control, real quick.
Everything. It's a real core memory. There's so much core memory, I think, that actually ties more in with Deadhouse, because Deadhouse really gets the ball rolling in a different way. Gardens of the Moon introduces us to the world, and then this book really kicks it off. You know, with
builds on it,
because it just really builds on it so beautifully here. But it's big. I love what we're walking into. It's getting bigger.
Yeah,
I just love it.
Great job tonight, Billy.
Really great job yourself, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Love this chapter.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, great episode, brother.
Do you have any final thoughts before we drop off here?
No, just love it. Love the book so much, and just a great episode.
Yeah, definitely. All right, everybody. Thanks. We'll see you next week.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll see y'all next week. Thanks for tuning in.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.